Welcome to our house, the House of Phi. At the House of Phi, we are all about achieving financial independence for families. Wherever you are in your financial independence journey, we want our house to be a place where you can learn and get inspired. If you are a parent on the journey to Phi, then come on in. We're glad that you're here. Here are your hosts, Wendy and Tamika.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode 2 on House of Phi. Today we're going to be speaking with Wendy, one of the co-hosts. What we're going to do is we're going to dive deep into her family history with money, how that's influenced her relationship with finances well into adulthood. We'll also learn some of the challenges from large amounts of student loan debt, also how she and her husband increased her family to 6 children, and how they keep costs low, particularly in their food budget. We'll also learn how she began to turn things around in a big way after finding the financial independence movement a little over a year ago. Her story is one wild ride, full of twists and turns. Find out how she was able to finally get off that crazy coaster and go from saving almost 0 to 38% in just a little over a year. We hope you enjoy the show.
So everyone, today we are talking to Wendy. We're going to interview her and talk through her Phi story, learn about her family. And I'm super excited because there's probably a lot of things that I don't even know, and we can all learn it together. So, Wendy, would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your family?
Sure. I'm excited to share too. So, my husband and I were both 47. He is a special education teacher and football coach. I am a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 15 years. I do criminal defense practice. However, I am retiring my practice. And as a matter of fact, at the time of this recording, I am currently in my last trial, and that's a pretty big deal. It's a homicide, so it's a big deal, big stakes. But after I complete this trial, hopefully that will be the last case that I take, and focusing then on real estate and this business, so the podcast, and I blog as well. And we have 6 children. So we have a daughter who's 22, a son who is 16, almost 17, and then we have 4 little boys. We adopted them a few years ago, and they are 7, 6, 4, and 3.
Oh my goodness.
big family. Big family.
With lots of little ones, too.
Yes. Yeah, at one point, just about all of them were in diapers and in cribs, so that was fun.
Oh, my goodness. Well, you seem like you're in the clear because you have the 3-year-old who may or may not, it's a little boy, the third?
Yeah, the 4 little ones are all boys, so we have 5 boys.
Yeah. So has he crossed over out of the pull-ups and diapers?
During the day. Yeah. No, we still do pull-ups at night. So there's still a little bit of that expense. And then my 4-year-old is still in pull-ups at night too. Hopefully once he starts kindergarten, he'll just naturally grow out of that, but we're not pushing it.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed that one of the biggest costs with the little kids is there's obviously the food. So you have the whole range of costs because you have the 16-year-old who probably eats.
And he eats a lot and he's always hungry. And then even the little ones, as they get older, they seem to eat more. So my 7-year-old, it's often that he wants seconds. So, it's more. So we try and really be cost conscious of our meals and keeping our per meal cost down, doing meals that we can have leftovers so we can use those for lunches and that sort of thing.
So there's a lot that I would like to talk about. I think that for the families that are listening, when you talk about the groceries, you talk about the meals, I think that one of the biggest things that they talk about in the Phi community is figuring out the cost per meal.
Right.
And first figuring out your entire budget. But have you seen a big change in your food budget now that you're on Phi?
Absolutely. So we found Choose Fi in last year, so about January of last year. But in about March or May is when we decided fully to dive in and really kind of take control of what we were doing with our money. And so when we first started, I'm almost embarrassed to say that we were spending probably over $2,000 or more a month on food. When you took
How much?
2,000, like a
Oh my
lot,
goodness.
like a lot. But that was including like eating out and groceries and all of that. So, and I myself was shocked because, you feel like the excuse for not saving was always, oh, I can't afford it. But when I stopped and took a look at our discretionary spending, like food, I'm like, gosh, $2,000 is a lot of money. There has to be a way that I can trim that. And even if I were able to just trim it by $500, that would be huge. And so we really, really kind of tighten our belts, and we're more intentional about our grocery shopping. We try and only shop like a big haul once a month, like Costco and that sort of thing, for like the snacks for the kids and their lunches and that sort of thing. And then I've got a routine for where I shop and what I get at each store. So it does take a little while. So it's a 3 to 4 hour ordeal whenever we go. Usually twice a month. I'll hit Costco, I'll hit the dollar store, I'll hit Aldi. And then for anything else that I need, we have a local farmers market type grocer that has fruits and vegetables, really good deals on fruits and vegetables and like organic and healthy stuff. And I'll kind of finish off there. And sometimes I throw in Walmart, but I'm always looking at like the price per unit on certain things. So here's a for instance, one of my favorite snacks is cashews. And so at Costco, they've got one of those big plastic jars of cashews, but they're expensive. They're like $22, $23. But I look at the price per unit on that. And when I compared it at Aldi, which the packaging was smaller, but the price per unit was significantly less. And when I compared the price per unit, I was going to save $6 at Aldi. And that's a lot. I mean, if you times that by 2, and then throughout the year, that's a lot of money. And that could be used for something else like meat, because meat is typically, your biggest thing.
So I am sure that I think I saw a post on your website, on your blog about food and groceries. So
I did
link that, because I think it's important that everyone begins this plan. I'm really bad about food, so I have to make the same types of things every week, and it has to be very standardized. But I would love to, one of my plans or one of my goals is probably, I think over the summer when I have a little bit more time, because I'm in education too, so I'm off, is to find some of those meals to add in that already, we already know cost a little less.
Right.
So I think that people can go to your site and.
Right. I did what I did on the blog Girl Friday is that I did a 4-week Aldi challenge. So I thought it would be fun to set a limit of $75 per week and prepare 7 meals for our family for that whole week. So we focused on dinners and not go over $75. And so if you go to my site, there's a 4-week Aldi challenge in there. And what it is $75 for 7 meals. And I map out what the meals were and how much it cost. And we met the challenge, which is pretty incredible for a family of 8 to feed the whole family a dinner every single week for $75 or less. So it can be done as long as you're intentional. And so a big part of that was meal planning out our shopping trips. And, there's a couple other rules that I follow. I never take kids with me when I'm shopping. I never go hungry. I stick to the list and I stick to the budget. And so as I'm going through the grocery store, I'm doing a tally. I'm doing like a roundup to the nearest quarter. And so I know when I'm shopping as I'm approaching that $75. And then, let's say I've got 3 things left and I'm already at $74, I can look back over my list and say, okay, well, what's something that I can take out that would account for, do I need something more than something else? Can I substitute? And that's a good way for me to stay on budget.
Yeah, I would add to that, don't go to the supermarket when you're on the phone, because I sometimes do that and I end up with all this stuff in my cart. So I really like that you can just implement, 1 or 2 rules to start slowly, implement a limit, and implement these rules of not being on the phone. Don't take the kids. Don't go when you're hungry, or if you are hungry, get something at the beginning of the store to eat, and pay for it and eat, because all of those can lead to that subconscious pulling in more stuff to your cart.
Right.
So that's awesome.
So by doing that, we slashed our budget. I only budget $1,200 now a month for us. And I think that's actually pretty decent. And that does include, and so one thing that I do that not everybody does is I include toiletries and paper towels and all of those things, detergent, cat litter, all of that is in my grocery budget. So it's $1,200 for everything that's needed for the household. And I think that's a pretty good amount.
For a month, that for that many people, that's amazing. You have inspired me. I need to do better. And we had a pretty decent budget. Well, not budget. We were going over in our food category.
Yeah.
Met much less people. And so we did bring it down, but I do notice that if you don't keep the routine, just like everything else, you start to slip back up. We're in a slide right now. So
it's totally easy to get that creep back in there. And it's that's life. You step back and you adjust and you hit it again.
Yes. So I heard a lot of things. Your husband is in special education. Right. So eventually I want to get to know if you use that 457, which I know the answer to. And, but before we get to that, is it possible to go back and you said you found Choose a 5 years ago, but what is your 5 story?
Okay. So I'm going to try and do the abbreviated version. We have had a roller coaster ride with finances. And so what I would preface both my story and my husband's story with is that we didn't have any examples of good financial habits growing up. My parents, I'm 47, so when I was a baby, my dad's coming back from Vietnam, and I'm watching my dad go from my mom and my dad from having nothing. I vividly remember being poor. I remember, getting government cheese and stuff like that. I remember not having much money. And I remember my dad graduating college, and I remember seeing his income increase over time and buying a house and all of that. And, by the time I was an adult, we were pretty solidly middle class. However, we were still living paycheck to paycheck. I heard we can't afford that often. So, and I was never taught about savings. I was never taught about scholarships and the importance of scholarships. And that led to some issues that I'll get to in a second. And my husband, it's kind of the same thing. His mom and dad got divorced when he was 10. And so his mom was working hard. She's trying to support 3 kids and being a single parent. And his dad was just, on the other side of the country and really wasn't involved in their lives for a really long time. And so she's struggling, and it just was hard. So we both came into our marriage at 25. And we were just figuring things out. We were just doing things on our own. We were figuring it out. And so, fast forward, we graduated from school, lots of student loan debt, huge amounts of student loan debt. You think being a lawyer that you're going to earn a whole bunch of money as soon as you graduate. However, not if you're doing public service. And that was the field that I went into, was public service, doing public defender work. And so I didn't make a lot of money, but I still had those, 200,000 plus student loans. Oh, wow. Then my husband had his student loans And those increased over time too as he got his master's. So, we were just starting out, but starting out with this huge amount of debt.
So the total amount of debt for student loans alone was the cost of what some people buy for a house.
For a mortgage, yeah. So that's how we started out, was basically a mortgage payment, with no assets starting out.
Was your payment around $1,000?
Oh no, they were more than $1,000.
Okay.
They were
about
more
$1,500, $2,000.
They were more like $1,200. And, for a longest time, I was able to keep those in forbearance. And another mistake, we should have just paid on them, found a way to pay on them. But instead, you have this vision as a lawyer and now a teacher, a coach, that, we're middle class. We should have a house. We should have a car. So in addition to that debt, we then started the lifestyle creep. We bought a house and, we put a pool in the house, and we both went out and got cars. And they weren't new cars, but they were new to us cars. And so we just started accumulating debt on top of this debt that we already had. And so, earlier that time frame, there was a bankruptcy. So this was a long time ago. This was, maybe 15. It was before I was a lawyer. So I think it was right out of law school. So maybe 16 years ago. So there was a bankruptcy there. We were able to keep our house, and we did really good for a time. Somewhere in there, we recovered, but then we didn't learn. We didn't learn the lesson. We found Dave Ramsey. We, tried to do better, and we did do better. And then you fall off the wagon. And kind of when we found Choose FI, that's where we were. Is we had made some progress, but we still didn't have any savings. And, we knew Dave Ramsey. I even led Dave Ramsey at church. And I knew his principles. I knew the baby steps. And we were working the baby steps really hard for a really, really long time. But I also, in my mind, had this recurring, tape. Well, you can't start a savings account or investments because you haven't paid off the student loans. You have all this debt still. And it was just such this huge, unsurmountable burden that I never felt that we could get going. And it was almost paralyzing.
So, when you hear all of it, it sounds like, you're being crushed. So you have the 200 plus thousand student loans, and you have the mortgage of however much, and you have the credit cards and everything. But at the time, so like you say that your parents didn't teach you anything, you learned by example, but did they give you any, obviously they must have instilled in both of you that you needed to go to college. And they must have instilled in you that you needed to get a good job, or like there's lots of positive things, even though these little, not mistakes, they're what happened in America. Even though the rat race happened, even though the hamster wheel began, there's still so many positive things that I think allow you now to dig your way out.
Right.
So when did the feeling shift from, wow, we're doing this, we graduated, we got jobs, we did this? When did you have the moment where you were just like, this is not how it's supposed to be?
Right.
Feel right.
Well, I would say the big epiphany, well, there were two periods. So the first started maybe 4 years ago. And at that time, it was right around the time that we started the process. So it would have been more than that because my son is 6 now, maybe 6 years ago. The itch for me to get out of the practice of law started. I was starting to get very dissatisfied with my practice. I was just feeling very, very burnout. The work that we do is important work, but it's hard work. We're dealing with some really serious stuff, and we're dealing with people at their worst. And it's just, if you don't pour yourself into it, at least in my opinion, you can't be a good lawyer. It's one of those professions or fields, I think, that you have to give 100%, and it doesn't always fill you back up. So I was beginning to feel the start of burnout. And so because of that,
how many years?
That was about 6 years ago. So it was right around the time that we started the process for adopting, at that time, our first adoption, Jacob. So with that, I was trying to figure out a way for me to find a way to work, but be at home and be my own boss. And so I started looking into all these online type businesses like drop shipping and, that kind of stuff, selling stuff on eBay, buying stuff and reselling it and seeing if I could do something with that. So nothing ever quite worked out. And then one of the other things that I did was I created this course, Debt Freedom course, and it was basically debt free, live free. And I created this course and I put it all together. I wrote an ebook. I did all this stuff and it was a great experience.
Really?
Yes. I did a book. I had a website. I created, the shopping carts, all of that. I prepared to rent out a space to have, like a conference or a session and charge for it. And like I did the whole process. It looked fabulous. And then I didn't sell anything. And so I was like, oh my gosh, all right. So that flopped. And so it's kind of back to the drawing board. But in that process of getting that up and running, found the Mad Scientist. And I was like, what? There are people that save 50% of their income and they're like young. What the heck?
Yeah.
We make a lot of money. We make a lot of money. We make more than most people and we're very fortunate. And what do we have to show for it? We have nothing to show for it. And by that time we had lost our houses and, we didn't have anything. What we had was a bunch of debt. And even though I felt proficient and capable of teaching people how to get out of debt, and we were getting out of debt, we still didn't have any savings. And so to see someone, and I knew that he wasn't the only one who was saving 50% or more of their income, I'm like, there's got to be a way for us to do that too. Mm-hmm. Even with all the debt, there has to be a way. And right. So that was when I went.
I want to ask you if you're at the 50% or not, but hold off.
So that was the point where I went down the rabbit hole. And that was the rabbit hole. And that was when I just began consuming every single financial independence thing that I could find. And I found the Choose 5 podcast in January of last year. And
I think it's awesome that you found the Mad Scientist first, because everyone says they got somehow to Dave, from Dave to Mr. Money Mustache. And
yeah,
that's pretty cool.
So, and then that was it. And from there, got my husband on board and we have just been killing it. Pat myself on the back. We're doing really, really good now. But it was such a major, just we can achieve our dreams. We can achieve our dreams. And that was just oh my gosh, we can retire early, even with this huge amount of debt. Because we make such good incomes, there's no reason why we can't pay off our debt and have our dreams come true and, go and live somewhere on the coast. We can do it. Mm-hmm. And so it was just so hopeful and inspiring and just so on fire about it.
So you found Dave and you found Mad Scientist and you found Choose a 5.
Yeah.
So what is was your husband just tagging along? We'll do the next thing you want to do, or does he have the fire too, or no?
So he's so much mellow. He's so much more mellower than me. We balance each other out. I'm the one who always comes up with these crazy ideas, and I'm the one with the entrepreneurial kind of spirit, and he's more all right, babe, it looks good. He wants to show me the facts, show me how this is going to work. And as soon as I prove to him that it's going to work, then he's totally on board. So, once I plugged in all the numbers, got on personal capital, did, the calculations to show how much we would have and how much we would retire with, how much we would potentially, leave this earth with for our children, he's like, let's do it. And that was the point where he was 100% on board with me and even started like listening to the podcasts and stuff. So it was a progression for him, but initially he's always like, all right, babe, whatever you say.
So is that one of your goals, to leave your kids with something? Because we talk about legacy and changing the family tree, and that's something that I know I want to do. Yeah,
I definitely want to leave my kids something, but I don't want to just leave them some money. I also want to leave them some skills with what to do with the money.
Skills, yeah.
But I also want them to think about what they're going to do. Are you going to be an entrepreneur? Are you going to work for somebody else? Just really give them kind of the push, and then they can decide what they want to do with it.
So how would you, if you looked at your kids, all of them right now, you have a 22-year-old who's maybe working or in college, you have one in high school, and you have the younger ones. How much do they know? How much have they learned over the last 6 to however many years?
So, they've seen all the bad stuff, of course. They experienced the loss of the houses and the bankruptcy and that kind of stuff. So they've seen the bad, but we never really had any kind of money conversations before. But since finding the financial independence community, we've been very, very open about what our goals are and what we're trying to do and the mistakes that we made and what we're doing differently, and talking to them about investments, talking to them about compound interest, making sure they understand what compound interest is, making sure that they understand that they should not have debt. So it's a very prevalent theme in our house. We talk about it all the time. And, my daughter did make some early financial mistakes, but what I see now is that even she has kind of changed her mindset, and saving money is now a priority for her, and paying off all her credit cards and paying off her car is a priority, and she's doing that. So I think we're in much better shape with them than we were.
Back to your experience and your husband's experience, and not having, any insight into the finances beyond get to school and get a good job.
Right.
Even just, like I said in the previous episode, my dad just said, always save. No more guidance, no more percentages, no more where do you put it, how do you make it grow?
Right.
He told me about him putting his money in some CDs, but there wasn't your husband is a teacher. There was no lesson plan or anything.
Right.
So I think anything that you can tell your kids or write to your kids or point them to as a research source is going to make a huge ripple for all of them. So what is your savings rate now?
We are right at about 38 or 39% now. Nice. Yeah. So we went from almost to zero to, the only savings that we had, because my husband is a teacher in California, he had the mandatory pension. So that, I think that equals about it's either 7 or 10% of his paycheck goes into the pension fund. So that was it. So that didn't equate to 10%. That equated more like, 3-4%. It wasn't very much because I'm the breadwinner in our household. So it was nothing. But because of finding Choose FI, we found out so much. We found out about what is a 403B. And we learned, oh my gosh, teachers not only get a 403B, but they get a 457. What? You mean we can save this much more? And so once we figured all that out, it was like, okay, how can we max those out? What can we eliminate out of our spending? What can we, do better about to max those out? And so we made a commitment that starting January 1st of this year, we were maxing out his 403B and his 457. So that started January 1st. And then
So it says that you said you made a commitment that this year you were going to max out both the 457 and the 403B.
Yes.
And so what everyone needs to understand is it's not just the 403B and the 457. Both of those have the 18,000 and I believe 500.
Yeah, 18,500.
Mm-hmm. But he's also putting in the 9% or so into the pension.
The pension,
so,
right.
Yeah.
And so how his pension will work and what we figured out is that he becomes eligible to receive that pension at 55. And it will give him the average of his highest 3 years. Mm-hmm. And he's almost maxed out on the pay scale right now. So it ends up being... It's a calculation. It's not just highest 3 years, but it's also years of service. So there's this calculation.
Generally, the combination, right, of your age, the number of years you served, and then the highest 3.
Right.
I know with mine, because of when I started, they switched it to the highest 5 years average. So that's going to that could potentially lower your average.
Right.
Depending on how it works.
How long you're paid at a certain rate.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So 55 is our number. We could probably reach our FI number sooner than age 55, but it just does not make sense to walk away from, and it's a lifetime pension. So It makes absolutely no sense to walk away from that lifetime pension. So we're not going to, quote unquote, retire until 55.
So how much do you share on about like his salary? It's probably public information, but do you share that on your site or no? No,
I don't. No. I don't share the dollar amounts. No.
Okay. So, do you know, or do you share the percentage that he gets? Mm-hmm. What is the percentage?
The percentage of what?
His maxed out percentage of his pension. So I know if I were to stay for the full 30 years, I would get 80% of the value of my.
Yeah,
so let's say
I don't know that off the top of my head. I would have to go back and look at CalSTARS and see what that is.
Most likely, if you do the calculations, it's always worth it to stay.
Yeah.
I am in a system where if I work a few more years, I get the pension. And so you kind of have to stay because even with me, at the very lowest point, you make 25%. So if you're making, let's say, for round numbers, $100,000 at your school, and you're going to get 25% of that when you retire. If you leave after the minimum amount of 10 years, that means you're going to get $25,000 when you retire. It's a huge amount of money. Many people don't even, get that in Social Security benefits.
Right.
So what you're saying is, let's say you have $25,000 and you retire and you live another 25 years, that pension is worth 25 times 25. So $600 and maybe $25,000 or $50,000.
Right.
That if you haven't saved up on your own outside, you kind of need it.
Exactly.
So really wonderful benefits.
It is a wonderful benefit, and it's really, we've grafted out. And so what that pension does, because we'll be able to draw on it at 55, is that pension helps reduce our FI number. So we don't, and we have another stream of income that we'll get for each child that's until they turn 18. So when we retire, our children will still be minors. So at 55, we have multiple sources of income that we won't have to immediately draw on our money, our investments. There'll be a few years where we don't have to withdraw any. Then there'll be a couple years where we have to draw just a little bit. And then assuming that Social Security is still there, which I do think it will be. I'm of the mindset that it will be there. It may not be there in the same form, but it will be there. Then at 62 and a half, we can then start drawing on Social Security and then take less of our investments again. So we're going to be in a fairly good position. So, if we're doing a drawdown based on the 4% rule, we're not even hitting 4% at any time. Even
Wow.
on the years that we have to draw from it before Social Security, we still don't have to take out 4%. We can take out about, I think, 3%.
Oh
So
my
with
goodness.
all of those things combined, we're doing okay, if the numbers hold.
What about your home? I know that my goal is to pay off whatever mortgage I have by the time I get to that point of retiring or reaching FI.
Right.
But I know my parents happen to have maybe like 15 more thousand when they retired that they've now paid off.
Uh-huh.
So they're in retirement. They have a paid off house. My husband's dad did not pay his off. He still has a small balance, and he has a small 401, and he has a normal amount for Social Security. So he's on a budget now that he's retired. So is that part of your FI plan?
It is part of our FI plan, but we don't intend on keeping our house. We have a fairly large home right now. We've got a 5-bedroom, 3.5 bath home because all 6 children still live with us. When we retire, our hope is that not all 6 of them will be with us. And number one, we don't plan on staying in San Diego when we retire. It's a high cost of living area. It's beautiful. We love it. I love being close to the water. But realistically, this is not the place for us to retire. So we intend to live somewhere else. So this house that we're in right now, we don't view it as an investment, but we definitely know that there's money that's going to be coming out of this house. It won't be paid off when we retire, but we were very lucky to have found it when the market still hadn't fully recovered yet. And we bought it as a foreclosure. So it was a fixer-upper, and we've done a lot of repairs to it, a lot of upgrades. And so even in the less than 2 years that we've had it, we've accumulated about $100,000 in equity already. And I've done the calculation and looked at the amortization schedule and the projected home value increases for this area. And I have an idea of what it will be worth and what our principal balance will be at the time that we retire. And we should hopefully realize close to $400,000 at that point. And that's on top of our, what we're able to save in our investments, less any fees for, realtor fees and all those. So it does figure into our, FI plan. But the intention is to take whatever money that we get from the sale of this house, and that's going to be our money to purchase another home outright somewhere else that has a lower cost of living that's also near water.
A lot of people go to Florida, New Hampshire, Texas, the places that don't have the income tax, especially those who have the pensions. So I'm trying to figure out where we will go one day. I have some time, but that's part of it too. And I think we've talked about Florida a little bit because of the water, and the weather. But it will be interesting to see where you go.
Yeah, I've got a pretty big dream. I'd love to open a bed and breakfast. So buy some place that will give us some residual income. That would be a dream come true. If it happens, who knows? 8 years is a long time. Things can change. But right now, that's kind of the vision I have, is to find somewhere that's big enough to house our family, but also has some income potential with it. My idea of retirement is to have people into our home and just love on them. And how I do that is having people in our home and making meals for them, and, sitting around and having discussion and laughter. And, when I picture my perfect world, that's my perfect world. It's a full house, a full house.
I love it too.
Love and laughter. And I figure, if I could do that, like it as a bed and breakfast, and host families, and bring them into our home, and it would just be a perfect future. So that's my hope, is to do something like that. And where that destination is, I don't quite know yet. We're going to take the next 8 years and travel, and it might be out of the country, it might be in the country. We just don't know. We're just going to travel and see. The next 8 years, we're going to, find it.
That is just awesome.
We'll know it when we find it.
Yeah, that is just amazing. had to answer a question about this in this other group that I was in, like, what would your dream world be like? And that was part of what I said, because I get a lot of like energy and positive energy, love from being around family, friends.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just awesome. That's a great
See,
idea.
we connect on so many levels. There's a reason we're doing this together.
It's so true.
Yeah.
So what it sounds like to me is that your vehicles to FI are the pension, some geo arbitrage maybe, moving to a different area and moving into a place that also produces a little bit of income. What else did you say? You're doing the extreme saving compared to other people. This is extreme saving. 38% is amazing, especially if you have a big salary. Yeah. Reducing your spending and then frugality.
Right, exactly.
It's like the
it's like
plan.
Brad says, I think it's Brad, maybe it's Jonathan, but Brad and Jonathan, what they say on Choose FI is that, using your levers. And I'm just trying to use as many levers as possible, because I figure, the more levers we pull, the faster that it's going to happen and the closer we get to our goals. So, if there's a way for me to save $100 a month, I'm going to do it.
So are you feeling, have you had to pull back? I know you said you found the mad scientist first, and he talked about going too far and having to pull back on some of the levers. Are there things that you just have to have where?
Yeah, there are things that we have to have, and it's more just for, like we do Pizza Friday. Like I could cut out Pizza Friday and, I could do pizzas at home, and we do that occasionally, but the kids love it. They look forward to it. And it's not like I'm out there buying, really expensive pizzas, they're fine with Little Caesars or, Domino's or whatever, or Costco sometimes. So, things like that where we get enjoyment out of it and the kids look forward to it. I think that it's worth it. And vacation, going on vacation with the kids, anything that's more of an experience and something where we have an opportunity to create memories, I'll find a way to do it.
One thing that I noticed, and I wonder if it's in finding Dave Ramsey first, was that you started to get burnt out with the law, being a lawyer, and then you found ways to change your career that didn't involve taking out more loans. Like you didn't go back to school. You didn't, So was that an intentional choice?
This time around it was. There's another side story there that at one point I was pursuing my MBA, but I won't go into the full story now. And that was going to be a huge increase again in my student loans, but that didn't happen. And then there was a period where I was still trying to figure things out after that. Then when I finally did start sitting down and thinking about, okay, what can I do again? Choosing real estate was that reason. It was something that I could do where I was in business for myself, that I was in control of how much money I made. If I hustled hard enough, I'm going to make money. And I could be my own boss, and I could not incur any debt in getting the career. And I could also have some flexibility with my schedule so that I can tailor my days to fit the needs of my family. So I was very intentional when I chose real estate. And so far it's been amazing. I'm very happy and I love it. And I'm excited to grow it into a really good business. And so far, so good.
Yeah. And you've already sold some houses.
Foreclosed deals, as a matter of
fact. Oh my goodness.
So, and that's in a very short period of time. So, I'm ahead of schedule of most new realtors by having 4 under my belt before 6 months. So, so this next year is going to be pretty big. I've got some big goals and I have every intention of hitting them. So
interesting when you said that you wrote an ebook, created a class. Yeah. Why didn't it work? What happened?
I think that, I think sometimes some things are luck and some things work when they're supposed to work and sometimes they don't. I just don't think it was the right time for that. I still believe in what I made. And I think that I learned a lot for that process, and it just wasn't the right time. And I think all of that information I can use somehow in our venture and in my blog. So at some point, maybe those ebooks will surface, maybe there'll be some revisions and they'll come out again. But, it wasn't that there was anything wrong with it. It wasn't the right time. So it didn't happen.
I just think it's so interesting that this idea, I always talk about grit and like the Duckworth book and the Carol Dweck book. And it seems I heard Jamila's story from Journey to Launch. I hear your story, my story. Yeah. And we all just started with a small, you created a whole thing, but like, you try start a website, or I think she had like gumball machines or vending machines.
She did. She had vending machines, but she also had a magazine. A magazine. Her friend from college. I read Grit too, and it's that stick-to-itness, I think is what she said, the stick-to-itness, where, maybe you have some failures, but you dust yourself off, you get yourself back up, and you try something else. You learn from whatever that failure was. It's that Failing Forward, which is a great book, by the way. It's an excellent book. But, it's failing forward. You learn from every single mistake there is, and you can take something from it. And book Failing Forward is a great book. And so is Grit. I've read both of those, and they're both excellent. And the principle is the same, is that if something doesn't work out, that's not the end of it. It can come back and you'll learn something from it. You repurpose it, you tweak it, whatever, or maybe it just wasn't the right time, but you try again.
And I think that it's so important too for those that are kind of attracted to the FI journey.
Yes.
It is not an easy journey.
No.
Dave Ramsey, that component of it is not easy for a lot of people, but it seems very like finite with the steps and everything, and so it's more palatable. But then to try to do these amazing extreme saving rates and to just go down this rabbit hole, it's tough, and the rewards are so great. I hear these stories. I hear your story about the bed and breakfast, and I can see it, and I can just imagine how great that really feels. And I hear other people's stories, and it's so worth it. And anything that's worth it, it takes a little bit of work and grit. Without this movement, I wouldn't have met you.
Right.
I wouldn't be sharing these stories.
Right.
And I don't know. I just find that it's just keeps amazing me. So that helps me to keep going. And
me too.
I hope that I answered or I got the questions that the audience members would like to hear answered. If anyone has any additional questions for either one of us, you can always go to our site, or when we post this, submit your questions. But I know that right now I just want to ask you some final questions.
Okay.
And those are, number one.
Yes.
What was one lesson you learned about money growing up that stays with you to this day, good or bad? And that's while you were growing up or after, whatever your first lesson was.
Yeah. I wrote about this in one of my blog posts. It's called Pennies in Styrofoam Cups, I think. Growing up, my grandpa, he was a Purple Heart veteran of, I think the Korean War. Yeah. But he was a veteran, and he was, and they both survived the Depression. And so they always used to go to the dented can stores, and my grandma had these shelves in our bedroom that, was the bedroom that was for my sister and I when we would come over to their house. But there was these shelves, and there was always canned goods stored on the shelves and jars of things. And they were always very frugal. And my grandpa used to save back when it's called Kentucky Fried Chicken, not KFC. It was Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, I remember that.
it was when they had the sporks with Colonel Sanders' head on the end. You
no, I don't remember that part. Oh my goodness.
But Kentucky Fried Chicken, and they had the small red and white striped containers that the mashed potatoes were in, and my grandpa would save those, and he would put tape around them, and he would cut a slit in the top, and he would save all his pennies. And there were stacks in this shelf by the door that went out to the garage. So there's all these stacks of pennies, and I never knew what he was saving those pennies for. And when I graduated from high school, my grandpa handed me a $100 bill, and it was his pennies. So he had saved those pennies, as I was growing up, and was able to give me this it was huge for them because they didn't have any money, but he was able to give me this just amazing $100 bill that I knew where it came from, and I was so appreciative of it. And I knew what that meant for him to be able to give that to me. So that just stuck with me, saving your pennies. They all matter. They all matter.
Oh, that is awesome. Okay. Let's assume your children are listening to the episode and you have their ear and undivided attention. What is the most important principle you hope to convey to them and to carry with them into adulthood?
Oh, I can't pick just one because they go together. The first one is do whatever you can to not get student loan debt. Don't start your life with student loan debt, and to begin saving as early as possible. That you can achieve whatever you dream of financially if you just save and you start early.
Finally, what is one life hack? And I think you gave us a lot of hacks. What is one life hack that you think other parents can benefit from to bring joy and fulfillment to their families?
We did talk about a lot, but I think I will go with one that I didn't go a whole lot in depth with, and that is travel and vacations doesn't have to be expensive with kids. Like, you don't always have to go to Disneyland. You don't always have to go somewhere. You can have adventures anywhere. And, with that, you can camp, you can make your own food. They don't care. In the big picture, they don't care. I think some of the best memories my children have ever had have been around a campfire doing s'mores, and, something silly happens. And that doesn't cost anything. It costs maybe $5 for a cord of wood. So you can travel, you can create these memories for your kids that really don't cost anything.
That is so true. Yeah. I will say that Reagan right now is in Harry Potter world. She just turned 10 this week. And that was not my idea, and I did not pay for it. It's like $3,000. So her dad can do that. And I will pay my pennies. And so I'm happy that she's there. But that's, a lot of people make a lot of decisions and spend a lot of money. And sometimes, the experience is memorable, but you're right. Camping up in New Hampshire, Maine, around here, and you have lots of places around there. There's lots of very affordable things, and the kids remember being together and the fun that happens. So, so true. Yes, I can't wait to talk to some more people and to put this out for everyone to hear and to keep going.
I know. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
All right. So, goodbye, everybody.
Yes, goodbye. I hope you enjoyed today. Talk to you next time.
Well, House of Five family, that brings this episode to a close. We appreciate you listening, and if you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. To show our appreciation for every 5 reviews we receive, we will reward that listener with one of our favorite reads. You can find out what that is in our current show notes. Our hope for this show is that we have both inspired you and provided you with practical tools that will aid you on your road to financial independence. We welcome your feedback. You can message us through our website in one of 2 ways, either through our Contact Us option, or you can leave us a voicemail. The third way that you can contact us is via our email address, and that is info@houseoffy.com. We read every message. Again, thank you for listening, and please come back to our house again next week. Have a great week, everybody.